Hello Sioux Falls and welcome to Planning Preview for the month of April. My name is Jason Bieber with the Planning Office at the City of Sioux Falls, and joining me for her second month now, right?
That's right.
You got the first month jitters done is Janet, who is our Planning Commission Chairman. So thanks a lot for joining us this month, Janet.
Yes, happy to be here, Jason. Yes,
Great.
So we have a full agenda, it looks like, for our preview. So the first one, it looks like number one is a future land use amendment and a development area kind of on 69th and Sycamore Avenue. So what's happening over there?
Yeah, so we've seen a couple of these, or one in the recent months, so we're really seeing some additional push for development in areas that we haven't identified as ready for development yet. And so these are some of those things where the applicants actually take it on themselves to maybe do a little bit more closer look at engineering.
Oh, sure.
See, hey, can it be sewered maybe earlier than what we originally had thought, because ours is more just, you know, a guess on where it would drop off and where it could do that. So we've been getting quite a few of these. You know, they'll provide us with that information, and if we look through it and it can have, you know, water, sewer, and if there's some roads, paved roads out of there, that's something then that we can support, maybe moving up to tier 1. And then they would work with our office on the next step, which would be annexation. And then some of the other things we see here, rezonings and preliminary plans as we move forward. So
right. Yeah, lots of growth out there for sure. Yeah. All right, then the next one, it looks like we're moving from an ag district to a conservation twin home residential, kind of ag to residential, which happens quite a bit in our community. So tell us a little bit about that. Looks like that one is out southeastern and south of you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you're right. So Bison Trail, that's about the south as we go on southeastern.
Yes.
So that'd be just east of the new Harrisburg Middle School. That looks like when you drive by there, it's got pretty much all the walls up. So, yep, this is just a development that we actually did a future land use amendment, I think, a couple months ago. And so they're coming in now, zoning it all, but only a portion of it's going to be ready to be developed at this time. So they're going to do some more twin home lots on there.
Nice, very good. All right, and then it looks like we're doing something similar, moving from conservation to the residential townhome kind of thing, and that's, again, and that one's closer down to east 26 and west of 6 Mile Road.
Yeah, so that's kind of that northwest corner of 26 and 6 Mile. If you haven't driven up 6 Mile to Arrowhead now, it's kind of funny because it curves to the west of actually the Alibi instead of going on the east side. So that's all completed, that intersection, which was kind of a mess, I think, the last year or two.
Sure
I don't drive out there, but so yeah, this is some vacant piece of ground that's been zoned for quite a while, with the applicants coming back now and maybe just moving some minor boundary line adjustments to maybe a little more apartments in this area, some more twin homes in this area, maybe less commercial, as they kind of get down to actually being ready to develop it. So
sure, that'll be nice. Yeah, really filling in out there.
Yes.
All right, then it looks like the next one we have on board is a rezone from that rec neighborhood streetcar community commercial to the general institutional district, and that's out at the Dolly Farm area.
Yep. So that'd be south of kind of the roundabout on 18th Street there, south of the movie theater, in those big open parcel west of Highline.
Oh, sure.
So they're looking to do another large office / institutional use out there, and then hopefully keep that lineal park that we have that goes from 26th Street all the way up behind Target.
Okay.
Hopefully at some point we can get that bike trail in there and get that thing done. So.
Oh yeah, that'll be nice. Absolutely. All right, then we'll move on to the next one. Looks like we're doing a rezone from the ag district to more of the townhome residential, and that's on 69th and Sycamore.
Yeah, so this was a big parcel that actually was annexed in, I believe, like a month ago. So that'd be at that southwest corner of Sycamore and 69th Street.
Right.
So large tract of land. The applicant's looking to kind of do what we typically see at those intersections, commercial, and then transition into some higher density residential, and then single family townhomes as you start to go south and get more away from those arterial streets. So
sure,
keep growing, and that'll butt up eventually to Veterans Parkway. So like you talked about earlier, but we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of push for growth now that we've actually, Veterans Parkway is going to become a reality instead of just a line on a map for the last 30 years.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be great when that's done.
Yep.
All right, and the next one is a rezone from the residential, single-family residential to more of the apartment high-density work, it looks like, and that's over on the Veterans Parkway, just north of Veterans Parkway?
Yeah, so this is a development we've seen. This is probably 4 or 5 months old. They rezoned all this. Just going back in there, and things changed a little bit, so they're just doing some boundary line adjustments in there to get some more different zoning with what they've seen coming in the last 6 months. So nothing too major, but.
Okay, just gotta get those boundaries changed. All right, and then the next one is another rezone from that single family residential suburban, and it looks like we're moving that to more to the commercial. Is that correct? On Madison and North Veterans Parkway?
Yeah, so it's similar to the one I just talked about. This one we're just changing the commercial a little bit, and then we're doing some more townhomes instead of, I think, single family there, which is typically we see as a better transition from retail. You typically don't see single family, so this should probably work a little better in the future.
Perfect. All right, then the next one after that is a rezone from that, once again, single family residential to the suburban, a suburban district to, it's amending the initial development plan for Augustana.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So this is one of those things that we like to work on with our big institutional campuses. It's a large plan for their entire campus. So they're actually getting with the next phase, with them constructing the large ice rink and getting a hockey program. I think they're being a little proactive to, hey, we might get an influx of maybe more students coming in. So this would be amending that and rezoning some properties that they own that are currently single family, that they'll move those houses off and get a plan to do possibly another dorm along Grange Avenue. So kind of be a little proactive. I think they're anticipating a little flux in admissions with starting a whole new program. So brand new arena. Yeah. Who
knew all those people loved hockey so
much?
That's right. Who knew? Right. Yes. And then it looks like we're just doing an ordinance amendment through the Shape Places.
Yeah. So this will be one of our big ordinance amendments that we'll talk a little bit about at our planning commission briefing, and then a little bit more in depth at the planning commission meeting. But this is adding those new zoning districts that we're really trying to focus on some of our core areas, some of our big corridors to try and get more dense and maybe not have single-story gas stations along Minnesota Avenue, maybe do retail on the bottom and 3-4 stories on there. So this is kind of that first step, and to hopefully give maybe some developers more tools in their toolbox to be able to redevelop some of these properties and some of these parking lots on Minnesota Avenue that we just don't have the need for anymore. So,
so true. But I think it's just a sign of how our city is changing, how it's growing, and we do need to be more dense in those areas. Yep, absolutely. And we have one other resolution amending the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan.
Yep, so this is going to be 2 parts to it, and the first part will be kind of the section of the comprehensive plan that will kind of talk a little bit about that midtown mixed use that we just talked about, to kind of make sure that the plan references it before we put it in the zoning ordinance. We kind of do those at the same time. And then the second part we'll actually get into a little bit here on the special segment with Jeff Schmitt with our office, who will talk a little bit about the growth tier maps along with the development summary. So kind of a big change that we like to do every year. But
sure, so more to come on that.
Yes.
All right, and it looks like that's kind of wrapping it up for us for the preview.
Yeah, pretty busy agenda, like I said, which is good to see. So
guess it's spring, so that means it's busier, right?
That's right. Well, thanks, Shanna, for joining us. And stay tuned, Sioux Falls. We'll be back with Jeff Schmitt with the planning office. Like we indicated earlier, he's going to talk a little bit about not only what happened in 2022, but talk about the amendments to what we call the growth tier maps, and really see maybe where we anticipate accelerated growth over the next 5 or 10 years. So stay tuned.
Hey, this is Seth with the City of Sioux Falls Housing Division. I'm here today with another Home Maintenance Minute for you. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your driveway in the winter. It is a city ordinance that you have to remove the snow within 48 hours of each snow event. And so in order to get that snow and ice off of your sidewalks, off of your driveways for yourself, a lot of people like to use salt. And I myself have used salt, and it works really great. However, as you can see with this driveway, this in particular homeowner used some really aggressive salts, and so it actually ate through the top layer of their driveway, and it's all pitted, and there's sand everywhere, and this concrete isn't going to last as long as it should. And so I just want to encourage you, when you're buying salt for this winter, to look for a magnesium chloride It is the most eco-friendly salt. It works up to 15 degrees below zero, and you don't have to worry about your pet's paws or anything like that. It's a really great product. It will be safe for your cement. However, still use sparingly. Don't overdo it. Thank you for watching today's Home Maintenance Minute.
Welcome back to Planning Preview for the month of April. Joining me for the special segment is Jeff Schmitt with the Planning Office. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
You bet, thank you.
And we get to talk kind of some what happened in 2022, which is great. And then we're also going to talk about some of the most important things maybe that the future planning office does and engineering does, really talking about future growth of the city. So
absolutely.
It's going to be kind of nice to see what has happened and what we think will happen. Right?
Which is why they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah,
we do this development summary every year to know what happened, but with stuff that happened last year, you have to start to project what's going to go on in the future.
And you've been doing this development summary for how long?
About 20 years.
20 years,
yeah.
So it's great. I know a lot of people always ask, where do I get all this information? Right. And I'm like, well, wait till March, because you got to take some time to compile it, obviously, and then you got to get it formatted. I'm like, go to the development summary. Everything you always ask us questions on, or developers or residents do, it's in this development summary.
Sure, and at the same time, anybody that's out there, if they need more information and they're asking for it, let us know, because we can put more information in the document.
So we saw 2022, we saw, obviously, everybody knows, record building permit activity with 190, whatever, 1,930 million,
Correct.
Record by 900 million. What trends did you see maybe from a development side with like annexations and preliminary plans in that from that aspect of it?
Sure, it all starts from that standpoint where you have to annex the land and start progressing forward until you can get to a building permit. So as you kind of alluded, we saw a lot of annexations last year. We saw 23 annexations with over 1,000 acres of land, and our 15-year average has been about 15 annexations. So quite a bit more land being annexed. So that shows, again, maybe in 2023, 2024, 2025, we'll have more land in the market going forward. Is kind of what I started seeing.
And I think you've talked about this quite a bit. These annexations that you've seen here, the 1,000 acres, and these aren't typically the one little residential house that wants to come in because the city's getting. These are people annexing property, and because they're ready to develop them for all of our different uses, retail, commercial, office.
Absolutely. For as long as you and I've been doing annexations, you don't get the one house anymore. It's really land that's coming in, agricultural land, big farms, maybe 100 acres, 200 acres that's coming in at a time.
And I know over the last couple of years, like 2021 and 2020, pretty much every time since we've heard Amazon and we've had Jefferson High School being announced and being constructed, Northwest Side has done more than probably any other quadrant that we have in the city. Was that typical last year too?
Yeah. So with the acres of platted land, we had, 1,100 acres in the north part of town, which is north of 12th. So we had 620 in the northeast, and we had 500 in the northwest. So then everybody's always like, that south part of town is really growing. Well, it is. Yeah. There's a lot of activity in the south, but a lot of our more recent activities in the north part of town. So we only had 175 acres in the southwest.
And so, like I was talking about, Northwest seems like that's been going, but that's pretty unexpected for the northeast part of town. We haven't seen that. Maybe in my 14 years here, I know you've been here a lot longer, but have you seen that kind of growth in the northeast part of town before?
The last couple of years, and what's really happened there is Veterans Parkway.
Yep.
So when Veterans Parkway opened up, now what we hear a lot from landowners and developers and builders is people have the ability to get up there. Yep. In the past, they were like, well, yeah, you could go to Rice, but to be able to get up there and show the land, to market the land, they were like, well, I have this piece of parcel in there, it's over there. Yeah. But now people have the ability to see the houses up there, to visit other people, to see the really open up land. And so it's really taken up in that northeast because of Veterans Parkway and the offshoots of the roads.
Yeah, and then part of this study too is you always do the population estimates every year, which is great. And I think it's fun for you to see, like you did 2010, That's when the census came out, and then the census came out again in 2020, right? And you were like, with you estimating population, but based on platted lots, households, all that stuff, you were very close to what the census estimated as us.
You know, and that's just one of those things, because we look at our building permits, and our building permits have occupancy, but you really have to say how many people are in those units. And, you know, I think the federal government has to look at, obviously, the entire United States, but they don't really always understand in Sioux Falls, everything's occupied.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a lot of vacant units.
No.
So that's really our challenge when, like you said, when we have, like last year, we had 4,460 units that were building permitted. So then you kind of have to start back and go, well, how many actually got completed? What's the vacancy rate? But then when I sit down every year, I'll go, okay, what's completed? What's their vacancy rate? And then I use census numbers for how many people are in the unit to come up with my population estimate every year.
And I think that's great too. You know, you've talked about this too for as long as I've worked here, because you've obviously been here a lot longer than me, but Sioux Falls has been pretty good at growing at that 2.5% to 3%, and maybe we've seen a little more of the last couple of years because of COVID and everything going on there. But in your mind's projection for 2023, still at kind of that 2.5% to 3%, 6,000 people?
Yeah, you know, and I think what people are really asking more about is they're like, yeah, but we had such a great year, and things are down this year. So, and they get really concerned. You and I have talked about this in the office, and they're really concerned. They're like, but isn't it going to be really? I'm like, no. It won't be a 7% year. It'll be a 2 to 3% year. You know, and in Sioux Falls we don't have negative numbers. You know, so when people are like, it's going to be bad, right? I'm like, it will be 3%.
And that kind of goes up to the next thing we're going to talk about with the growth tier maps, but. To try and plan, you know, I talk about it a lot. You guys obviously do too in the comprehensive planning division of us. Is it's a lot easier to manage 2.5% to 3% when you start spiking way up there like the Harrisburgs did. I mean, how do you manage that growth, right? It doesn't work very well.
Right, because you have to, all of this that we're talking about today is based upon, we need to understand that looking forward, because you have to have the public resources to be able to put the utilities in so that the private investment can go forward. When we were just talking about housing numbers, and again, when people go 4,000 housing units, what does that mean? For example, we did 4,300 housing units last year. In Omaha, they did 3,700 housing units. Rochester, Minnesota did 990, Fargo did 700, and Rapid City did 700. So in the state of South Dakota, we did 4,300 and Rapid City did 700.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
that gives people a perspective of how many more units we're building in Sioux Falls. And then you go, okay, with that 4,300, we got to put in water, roads, schools, libraries, a gas station, all these things, because you have so many more people moving into Sioux Falls every time.
Yeah, and I think that's funny when I do a lot of those bus tours, and you guys do a lot of speaking to different groups around about planning and stuff. It really becomes like tangible to them when we can say, well, typically every 4 years we're planning for Brookings to come to Sioux Falls, right? I mean, that's we know Brookings is a pretty big town. I mean, that's not Sioux Falls, but we've driven through Brookings. We're like, you guys are planning that? Us, the engineers, everybody's planning that every 4 years. I mean,
why do you need so much in Sioux Falls? Well, because we're adding all these people that need all these services.
And I think that's a great. So anything else that really stood out to you in 2022 that you're like,
employment is the other thing that we always put in here, just so that people understand. We look at the very end too, and we look at how many people are employed in the city of Sioux Falls, and we ended the year at 170,000 people employed with a 2% unemployment rate. We started the year at 160,000, ended at 170, and this is, again, I always try to in this talk about, we just came off COVID. So the numbers really dropped down, and they're always, now they're way back up. But that's just something else that people are like, well, what about, you got building permits, you have housing, we also do employment in here also.
Yeah, it's a great document. Like I said, it's probably the best one that the planning department does to go through the year. I mean, everybody likes the building permit numbers and the 3-year average, but everything's in this document, and you can go to the planning department within the city to get this, and I believe it's online now.
Correct. Yes. Yep.
And then you can actually look back to all of them.
Correct.
You keep them all aligned, and like I said, it's a great document. So let's shift just a little bit, because one of the things now that you guys are working on and you're doing every year, or trying to do every year, which I think is great, because to keep up with what we talk about, Brookings coming here every 4 years, you got to project growth out, right? You got to project where we need that infrastructure and where you guys are thinking it's going to go, right? Is it going to go in the northeast again, or is it going to start coming south? But so you guys are busy working on the tier maps, the growth tier maps. You look like you're bringing that to Planning Commission here in April, and then City Council in May. But what are some of the things, or some of the trends you're seeing in those growth tier maps for 2023?
Sure, and I've kind of alluded to it already. The big issue is we need to make sure that we have the resources available. So we work with all departments, every department, to say, what did you complete last year? What got built? And then what is in your budget? I mean, how much money do you have? And a lot, that's the challenge. And they're like, so what do you think you can build next year? But not only in 2023, 2024, but in 5 years, what do you think can get built? And in 20 years, what can, and that's the hard part, and the outlining. And they're like, well, we kind of have an idea in 5 years, but in 20 years, we don't know. So then I know here that we do 800 acres every year is how much we build. So then I go, okay, in 5 years, I need this much land. In 10 years, I need 8,000 acres. So then you start going, well, okay, if we're going to have this many people coming to Sioux Falls, how can we sustain that over time?
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about it. I don't think people realize that you guys actually utilize data and numbers to figure out how many acres we got to put in each of the 3 tiers, right?
Correct.
The 0 to 5, the 5 to 10, and then, like you said, the 20 years out.
And absolutely, when they see this map, and again, we'll have it online, we'll show it for Planning Commission. In this first tier, which say, in 5 years, do we have the resources? And we do really well. We have 3,740 acres available, enough supply for 4.5 years of growth. The next tier is a 10-year, and we're really hurt there. We only have 3.5 years of growth in a 10-year time frame. But then in our third tier, which is 10, we have 19 years of land in our third, because we've put it all on the back end. So what we'd like to do, and this gets really pretty technical, but we look at it and you're like, so why is all the land? Because you have to have the resources available. So we may not have the resources in 10 years, but we've kind of, just like your own home budget, you're like, okay, this is all the stuff we'd like to do, but I got it in the first, but I don't maybe not have it in the long term. So overall, we have enough land to do 25 years of growth, but we just have to budget accordingly and move it up in the second tier.
And I think that's one of the other big points that we always have, that, well, there's no land available, and you talk about this all the time. You run the numbers. We have, how many acres do we have that's currently ready to be developed?
Yeah, about 10,000 acres.
That's within our,
City
pretty much
limits.
surrounded by the city,
Correct,
right? In city limits, ready to be developed.
Yes.
And then the other aspect that we always talk about too is some of those parcels we got to get more dense with too, and some of those underutilized things that we see all over the city, right? Parking lots and all
as
that.
you just said, I mean, it's those little acres right now. They're like, yeah, but I'm looking for this other. We understand that, but we currently have a road and a water and sewer here running right past this vacant parcel. It might not be the best parcel, but you could put a house or a twin home on that, and that's like we want people to use our public infrastructure that the citizens already paid for already and use that versus, hey, how about we build more infrastructure out here and use it? And we're like, how do you use those resources? And then you also talked about today at your Planning Commission's information coming up for April, the future land use amendments.
Yep, and that's going in 2 areas, 69th and Sycamore, that have been vacant forever. And it seems like we're getting a lot of correlation with the Veterans Parkway. Are you seeing that with the differences in the tier maps? Have you had to move some up to maybe tier 1 from tier 2 or tier 3 to tier 2 as part of that?
Absolutely, because they're seeing the road come in, and with the road resources, then they're like, okay, if the road's there and sewer's coming out to it, then the land becomes available.
Yep, and I think that'll be the most thing I'm interested about, is that south side of the city, because I think we've talked to them in the next 5 or so years. Sounds like we're going to start putting some major capital dollars in to try and open up some of that land on the south side. And as we always talk about this, we don't really have that much room on the south, right?
Yeah, no.
You go to 106 and that's it.
It goes into that next community, and we hit the Big Sioux River and go over to Iowa. So that's that long-term aspect that we hit Brandon, Harrisburg, Hartford, and so these other communities, which is what you see in Omaha and Minneapolis. And then you're like, so what else do we look at? We try to get out further.
Great. Well, anything else that you can give us for the little bit of insight on these maps?
Just the summary that you already started with. Call us, let us know. You always reach out to us because there's just a lot of information. Go online, but if you have questions, always feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, like I think that's a good point to bring it all full circle. There's a lot of good documents out there. Sometimes we're working on our website. It's a little challenging to find stuff, but all of our contact information's on there, so reach out. We can get those to you. I mean, we'd rather have you read this stuff than
and have a question about it. Go, well, I'm just wondering about this.
Yeah, spend all the time working on it. You'd like to have somebody read it, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jeff. Like I said, we usually have you on a couple times a year, so we'll probably have to have you on again and
thank you.
Maybe to talk about that. So, and thanks for joining us for this month for planning preview for the month of April. The meeting for this month is on April 5th at 6 o'clock. We will be discussing the items that we did in the first part of the show, but we also do have that 5-minute of public comment at the end of the agenda that you can come and talk about anything planning related. So thanks, Sioux Falls, and have a great day.